and welcome to another super fun episode of Deck Musings, where we take a look at decks from a bygone era at this point, very bygone. So I'm actually managing to go back in time instead of forward. But yeah, I'm having so much fun, and I'll come on to the articles in a moment that are causing this, or particularly I think one article. And I'll make sure I include links to those again in this episode in case you haven't seen the earlier episodes. So we're at this point in Magic's history, and I just find this era, I think it's like, you can see it's a pretty short space of time. So there's this weird point in time where there was almost like this modified version of Standard. Well, it was a modified. This is the problem, is like you're talking about Standard. Standard back then is different than what Standard become, which ultimately is going to be different from what Standard is now once they make the changes that they're proposing, if indeed they've done it already. But here we have Standard that is comprised of 4th edition Chronicles, which is I don't know if it is the first example outside of a core set of a set specifically containing reprints to solve a particular problem. We'll come on to that in a moment. We've got Fallen Empires, we've got Ice Age, and we've got Homelands. And we've got this tournament from which this deck I'm going to do today is from, which is Pro Tour New York. It's actually the first Pro Tour tournament, and it uses a modified standard where the players build their decks including at least 5 cards from each set that was legal in the format. And you'll see why this gets so odd in a moment once we go through the deck I've picked. But, of course, the other thing is I can't think of a time beyond this where having one of these types of sets, as I've said, beyond a core set, which is reprints, but having something that wasn't a core set that contained reprints was a thing. I mean, once that rotated out, I don't think we've ever seen that again. That happen. So you can bet this is going to be an interesting deck with this 5 cards from each set requirement. Those cards actually could be in the, or some of them. So that includes the sideboard. So yeah, you could slide some of them into the sideboard, I suppose, and never use them. So I'll include a link to Chronicles because it is a super interesting set if you've not been down this rabbit hole. Yeah, it was not considered an official expansion, but an extension to the 4th edition core set. Till the release of Modern Masters, it was notable being the only tournament legal non-core set that introduced no core new cards. Yeah, I suppose this is tournament legal because it was tournament legal for Modern. Yeah, so we've got 116 cards in here, and it pulls from Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends and the Dark. And it goes a little bit in about the nature of it and what it sort of tried to solve, and yeah, caused a lot of ruckus at the time. There's 12 card boosters. Again, back then weird stuff was going on with boosters, but yeah, have a read through, real interesting. I'll include the link. So going back to the actual time frame here, so Pro Tour New York, first ever Pro Tour, first Magic tournament to award a sizable cash prize. Total amount of 30,000 was still small compared to subsequent Pro Tours. Okay, only 7 rounds of Swiss play. Yep. Oh yeah, also known as Pro Tour Speed Dial, because players had to call the Wizards of the Coast offices to register for one of the available slots. Several players considered by Wizards of the Coast to be the best at the game were also invited to play to make the inaugural tournament more attractive. There's a snowstorm as well. And there is the top 8. And we'll get on to the deck that was played by the winner, Michael Aconto. See, there's George Baxter there, who I've mentioned in a previous episode. And I'll include this article as well about the first 8 constructed Pro Tours, Part 1. And there's a nice little bit about the deck here. Interesting deck. It's a sort of weird combination of, I suppose, mill and slow damage, which is achieved by, well, preventing yourself from being killed before that happens, before the winning through mill or winning through slow damage can be a thing. You can see there's a lot of non-creature spells here that are control spells. It's a as it says, it's a blue-white control deck. Quite a number of artifacts, and notice a lot of like 1-ofs and 2-ofs in the main deck. Now, of course, that part of the reason for that is this requirement to have a certain amount of cards from each of the sets that were legal in standard. So let's get on to the deck. There's a lot to talk about here, and I'm trying desperately to keep the time of these episodes down, because I think last week's one was about 2 hours. I'm fine with that. I love doing these, but I'm not sure how much people can tolerate 2 hours. So yeah, we'll see how I do. One thing with Chronicles, you'll note there's quite a number of Chronicles cards in here. The big giveaway for a Chronicles card is it's a white border with the original set symbol on it. On a separate note, there's quite a few interesting cards that crop up in Chronicles, and I found it a good way to get hold of sort of cheap versions of certain cards, which otherwise, if you buy the original version, are quite expensive. So yeah, you'll see there's a lot of white border here because, of course, 4th edition is in here as well. And just scroll through, because this whole business of playing a certain amount of cards was so critical. And you can see here we got Homelands, we got Fallen Empires, and in the sideboard more from those sets. You can see there's quite a bit of Ice Age here. So yeah, Ice Age, 4th edition, Homelands, Fallen Empires and Chronicles. In that card pool, I think there's about 21 duplicates, so that's cards where they've been printed in more than one set in that legal card pool for the tournament. So it's quite possible that obviously what I'm showing here isn't exactly how the deck looked from an aesthetics point of view, but I think it's close enough. Okay, so let's go through this. So we've got 2 Fountains of Youth, 0 to cast, 2 tap, gain 1 life. Zuran Orb, which we've seen before in another episode, at least one other episode, 0 to cast, 0 sacrifice a land to gain 2 life. Feldon's Cave, 1 to cast, tap, reshuffle your library, reshuffle your graveyard into your library, remove Feldon's Cane from the game. So I'm assuming that this deck, or presumes that the games are going to go long, and you've got ways of restocking your library from all the cards that are in the graveyard. Ivory Tower, you notice, look, artifacts is there. Already we've got 1 each of these. Ivory Tower, 1 to cast. At the beginning of your upkeep, gain 1 life for each card in your hand in excess of 4. So a lot of cards here basically stopping you from dying. to damage, to direct damage. 2 Millstones, so 2 tap, take the top 2 cards from the target player's library and put them into that player's graveyard. Icy Manipulator, 4 to cast, 1 tap target artifact, creature or land, so a bit of tap down here, control that way. Jayemdae, is that Jayemdae? I can never say this one. Jayemdae Tome, 4 to cast, 4 tap, draw 1 card. Then we've got the only creatures in the deck, of which there are 2 of these. 3 and a white for a 2/2. And for nothing, you can return Blinking Spirit to owner's hand. Enchantment wise, we've got land tax. During upkeep, if an opponent controls more land than you may search the library and remove up to 3 basic land cards and put them into your hand. Reshuffle your library afterwards. Hallowed Ground, 1 and a white for 2 white. Return target non-snow covered land you control to owner's hand. And we have control magic, so we can steal stuff. 2 and 2 blue, gain control of target creature, and it's enchantment, so you're gaining control of that creature permanently, so you're stealing stuff. So obviously another way that this can win, if you steal something useful, creature that the opponent has, you can swing in with that, turn their creatures against them. Swords to Plowshares. So you've got a number of pieces of removal counter here. So we've got Swords to Plowshares. We've got Counterspell. We have Disenchant to get rid of enchantments or artifacts. We have Deflection. So 3 in the blue. I don't think we've seen this in any episode so far. I don't think so anyway. Target spell, which must have a single target. Targets a new spell, target of your choice. So we're actually this is deflecting something and retargeting it. So that's interesting to think of all the different ways that could potentially be used. Targets a single target spell. Land base, so we've got white-blue fixing here in the form of Adarkar Wastes. So this was that cycle. And you can see, unless you want to generate colourless mana, for the coloured mana, it's going to do 1 damage to you. 4 islands, 4 Mishra's factories. This is interesting. So tap, add 1 colourless mana to your mana pool. 1 Mishra's factory becomes an assembly worker. A 2/2 artifact creature until end of turn. Assembly worker still counts as a land, but it cannot be tapped for mana the turn it comes into play. Tap. Target assembly worker gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Ruins of Trokair comes into play tapped. You can tap it to add white to your mana pool. Tap it, sacrifice it, add 2 white to your mana pool. You can see there's the same one in blue. We've got Strip Mine, so that adds colourless mana to your mana pool, but you can sack it and destroy a target land. And then we've got Wizard's School. So this is one of these lands from Homelands. So add 1 colourless to your mana pool. Fine. And then you get this filtering business for blue, white and black. So as far as I know, it's not in here for the black. It's purely the blue and white, and the fact that you have to play a certain amount of cards from the legal sets at that point in this tournament. So I'm assuming that's one way you can do it. It's just having a copy of one of these Homeland lands. So we've got filtering for the other colours. So pretty well, look here, 2 of any colour, tap, add white. So you can see, not a very efficient way of generating mana. 6 sorceries, so we've got 1 recall, choose and discard X cards from your hand to take X target cards from your graveyard and put them into your hand. Remove recall from the game. We have balance, so each player sacrifices enough lands to equalise the number of lands all players control. The player who controls the fewest lands cannot sacrifice any in this way. All players then equalise cards in hand and then creatures in play in the same way. Now the cool thing is it's always good in the way, you know, since the get-go that Magic was worded and seen as a multiplayer, or the potential to be played multiplayer, which I think is cool. That was done from the get-go. We've got 4 Wrath of Gods, 2 and 2 white, bury all creatures, and our sideboard, yeah, all over the map. So we've got Hydroblast, basically a way of dealing with red stuff. We have Aeolipile, so that 2 to cast, 1 tap, sacrifice it to deal 2 damage to any target. So direct damage if you're not playing red, although people can see that coming obviously. Circle of Protection red, prevent all damage against you from 1 red source. If a source deals damage to you more than once in a turn, you may pay 1 each time to prevent damage. Divine Offering, destroy an artifact, gain life equal to the artifact's casting cost. Sea Sprite, so this actually is another creature here. Flying, protection from red. It's a 1/1 for 1 of the blue. Got another control magic in here. We've got a Jester's Cap, so I think, as I said in the previous episode, nice way of dealing with problematic cards that your opponent's playing, those sort of things. Serrated Arrows, so another interesting way of dealing damage here. So 4 to cast. When Serrated Arrows comes into play, put 3 arrowhead counters on it. During your upkeep, bury Serrated Arrows if there's no arrowhead counters on it. Tap, remove an arrowhead counter from Serrated Arrows, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and then steal artifact. 2 and 2 blue, gain control of a target artifact. And that's it. I don't really cover this bit anyway, but we might as well have a look. There's the curve. So let's dive in. Start off with the most important cards in the deck. And I just wanted to show you, I decided to pick the core set for the basic land artwork in this, because it's interesting, like what it pulls from. In fact, I think, yeah, so the only other, I mean, obviously you can play any basic land artwork in a deck, but it's interesting. So at that point, what you would have had, the 2 sets that had land in them would have been the core set and Ice Age. So yeah, there's our planes. And then, just for completeness, even though these weren't played in the deck, if you're curious, there's the remaining artwork from 4th edition. So 3 pieces of artwork: Forest, Mountain, Swamp, and then there's the islands and plains we've already seen. Okay. Adarkar Wastes. We've seen this particular cycle a lot, so I don't know whether I want to spend too much time on here. Obviously, it's Pain Lands, and it's worse than Tundra. So obviously they didn't want to start reprinting the original jewels here. So that's where these come in. Cycle of Pain Lands. So when we're talking about Pain Lands, yeah, really anything where something on the card generates damage to you, although you can see a few here where it's not, strictly speaking, 1 damage. But you can see loads of instances in Magic's history where we have Pain Lands, and again, yeah, some slight variations here. It's interesting, isn't it? With some of these say 1 damage to you, and some say pay 1 life over the course of Magic's history. And if we just do this, let's just see. Oops. What was the first example of a pain land? Well, City of Brass. And got Mount Doom from the most recent set. And you'll probably guess that on and off all these various pain lands to some degree or another, have been reprinted in various guises. Cropped up in 10th edition actually. And of course here what you have is, these would be, the allied pain lands. Okay. Oh, good old balance. Yeah, if you wonder, I'm going through in alphabetical order in this episode. So we got balance. Oh, look at that. Banned all over the place and restricted. Just basically, not legal anywhere. Well, apart from vintage, actually. Yeah. Not legal or banned. Restricted in vintage. Okay, let's just have a look. I'll have a look at some other balance cards. I think that's the most logical thing to do, seeing as this is only playable in one format. What's this? Oh yeah, Makers of the Balance, that's right. I mean, it slots into other things like Sweeper Land, Sacrifice, Discard, but... So there we go, effects like the card Balance. That Equipoise, that's interesting. During your upkeep, for each land target player controls in excess of the number of lands you control, target land he or she controls phases out. Okay, repeat this process for artifacts and then for creatures. Ooh. Balancing Act. Each player chooses a number of permanents he or she controls equal to the number of permanents controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Each player discards cards from his or her hand the same way. So with balance, let's just look at this. So what are we seeing? Did this get any special treatment? Did it turn up in EMA? A few of these are online formats as well. Obviously clear, you can see this is cropped up in some of the, this must be the Pro Tour collection here. I don't know how quickly Balance got banned. It's not a card I've ever played, really. It's far too old for the situation to arise. I don't even know, do I have a copy of it? I don't think so. Yeah, probably not. How much is it? Yeah, I don't think I do. Well, saying that, yeah. I'm sure if I have, it'll get dug out at some point. I'm not, Friday's episode is going to be interesting and very, what's the word, Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best word to describe it, but yeah. So Friday's artwork video, I'm really looking forward to doing it. Yeah, I've dug out some real interesting cards, let's say that. He says with a big smile on his face. It's going to be a little bit cheesy. Yeah, what was I doing? I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here. I'm not doing very well here at trying to keep up the speed. Oh well. Yeah, so I'm just curious. The reason why I'm bouncing in and out here is I'm just curious. So you could argue that out of all of these balance cards, actually the one that's been reprinted the most is balance. And the other ones, even though they're pretty much, are they legal in every format that they would be potentially playable in? Oh, that came up in Commander. Yeah, they've not been reprinted, but then if you look at the price, yeah. So interesting. Okay. Oh, Blinking Spirit. This is an interesting card. So this being able to bounce yourself out of trouble for nothing. It's in this Pro Tour collector's set, so they must have done something in terms of these decks that turned up in tournaments, because we've seen what the World Championship decks. So they were doing stuff before that. There must have been like a set. This bit here, if you're curious, is the name of the person that put their signature on it. So that's why you'll see this where it says ET here or ML. Okay, let's dive in. So we have to do this now because I tend to forget when I'm doing this that, of course, if you've got a lot of reprints, it doesn't always show the most recent or the oldest. So this one's from Ice Age, and that's where it started. And yeah, so bounce self is a thing. It's 160 cards that do that to some degree or another, and if I must remember to copy this in. Let's do that. So what do we have before that? Puppet Master. Oh, that's an enchantment. So we should. Yeah. So I'm probably more interested in. Look, we have a doggo, Snowhound. I'm probably more interested in creatures that do it, actually. Feldgriff does it for a blue. I don't know if there's anything else that does it for nothing. I mean, some things do it in response to something else happening. Oh yeah, Ephemeron. That's right. Yeah, it's got a wide variety of things here that will trigger that bounce. You have these cards which do it in response to being blocked as well. Just seeing if it's interesting. Phantom here. I think that's it is an illusion. So a lot of time with illusions, they tend to get like blown up if they have something cast at them. That one bounces when it's attacks or block, but at the end of combat, of course, yeah, Arcanus, although there's a pretty heavy cost to doing that. Crovax. Oh, of course, Stonecloaker, yes. 2 and a white, flash flying. 3/2. When it comes into play, return a creature you control to its owner. So that's actually bouncing. Yeah, well, if you don't have anything in play, you know, it's going to bounce itself. So yeah, some of these are cards that actually have the potential to bounce themselves under certain conditions, but that's not necessarily the plan. So printings wise, it's kicking around till 9th edition. It was in the Battle Royale box set. Okay. Control magic. Yep. It's cropped up a few times in command. Well, say a few times. Once possibly. What's that? That's the dual deck. And that's Vintage Masters. Now, Vintage Masters, that was online only though, wasn't it? Control magic. So, let's have a look. Mind Control's the one I tend to think of because just of when it came out. That was closer to when I started sort of collecting a lot of Magic cards, or you know, consistently opening sets, I suppose. So we have Mind Control, so it's better than Mind Control, better than Persuasion, and it's all about the theft of a creature, which occurs quite a bit. Did I remember to? Yep. So, and yeah, there's ways in which blue does it, and there's ways in which red does it. So you'll notice as where it happens in red, it tends to just happen for a relatively short period of time, whereas with blue, it's slightly more permanent. Gilded Drake, how much is that now? Oh, 246. Yeah, you get to exchange control. Yeah, and you can see there's a lot of like blue stuff here and multicolored. And when black does it, it's obviously tends to be from, you know, an opponent's graveyard. It's interesting, it's actually on Sliver Overlord. So you could steal your opponent's slivers in the mirror match. And then in terms of artifacts, so we've got Verdelkin Shackles. You can see some of these cards, it's conditional as well on certain things. There's Mind Control from M10. So cards in Magic that will steal stuff. And it exists in, you know, various guises. We've got sorceries here. We've got, I mean, obviously enchantment auras where it's holding onto it permanently, and then also abilities that are stapled to creatures. So, to give you some idea of how it's attributed or manifests itself, I suppose, on different card types, I just put enchantment. So we got 48 there. Does it ever crop up on an artifact, for instance, in some way? Oh yeah, those sort of cards, of course. On a creature, yeah, we've seen some commanders that do that. Yeah, there's quite a few legendaries that have that ability on them. Quite a number of creatures generally. If we look at sorceries, we'll probably see some red stuff here. There's some blue stuff as well. And there in blue you'll see it's an exchange control thing often. You can see here we've got, for the red one, gain control of all creature. It's target opponent controls until end of turn. So quite a lot of the red ones, do until end of turn. Instant speed. Yeah, there's quite a lot here. What we got? 14. Well, say quite a lot. 14. Desertion. Probably more than I thought. Temporary insanity. Cool. Okay, good old counterspell. Banned in historic. Yeah. As we've seen, lots of things where it's better than certain cards. Or worse than, say, mana drain. Better than nullify, better than start rebuttal, better than wizard's retort. And yeah, as a tag in Scryfall, yeah, it's pretty broad. In terms of, and again, do this. So if I just put these around here, and then what I'm interested in, so we're doing monocolour, and how much do you see those sort of things in other colours, and how is that slightly altered? You can see in red we got a bit of redirection going on here. Oh, it might be in the context of something else. So it just, it might mention, or it might cause a spell to be countered because of some other action that's going on. Oh, sometimes you might see it, I know, crop up on a modal white spell, or with some sort of other condition, or with I should have done IDs there, would have been better, because obviously you get some cards where there's another cost on there, that's say a blue cost for the counterspell component. And if we look at black here, then invariably there's some other reason why it's countering that. Or there's something there, like some other condition to do with life, or some other resource you have to pay. Green ones are interesting. Okay, Deflection. So yeah, it was reprinted in a few core sets over the years. Similar to Imp's Mischief. Change the target of a target spell with a single target. You lose life equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Yeah, so there we go. It's a good example of where you've got a card in black and there's some other thing going on there. And in terms of changing targets, 40 things that change targets. Let's just sort these by release date. You got things like reroute in red, and there's a redirect there in blue. Yeah, I was thinking of Wild Ricochet as well. Oh, of course, Spell Skite as well. Yeah, that was pretty cool at the time when that came out in Standard. I mean, it still is, but yeah, that was interesting to see that crop up in tournament play quite a bit. Disenchant, yeah, we've spoken about before. I don't know if there's anything more I really need to add to this. I mean, I know potentially these could change. USG storyline in cards. What's that? I don't think we've gone down that rabbit hole. Oh yeah. Stuff related to Urza. Okay. Interesting tag. I was thinking, the first time that Naturalize cropped up, so that's the green one. Oh, that was M9. No, hang on, sorry. Was it actually? No. It's funny, some of these, yeah, I wrongly remember stuff. So I start thinking, oh, did that crop up as like one of the colour shifted cards? But no, that's a clearly seen as a green thing. Feldon's Cave. That was on, yeah, the Time Spiral reprint for the time shifted card. Not that much, but it is in the in Chronicles. So I imagine, oh, even an Antiquities one is $10, so not eye-watering. So it's restock, similar to Cranial Archive. Anagram and vanity card. So yeah, quite a number of different types of spell that do this. Oh, the baubles. But that's more of a... So, when you compare it to... this, yeah, that's reshuffling your graveyard into your library, so that's a whole thing. Cranial Archive does the same thing, but more expensive. Yeah, so what I'd be curious is, in terms of the type of restock that's going on, only some of these do the whole graveyard. You can see a number are more like targeted certain cards. I suppose I was just trying to think, like, how can I take those out? So if I, because it's an untargeted spell. Yeah, it's not gonna completely screen out everything. I suppose if I do yeah, so it's just shuffling. And starting to make the ones appear that are slightly more like it, because it's filtering out all the stuff that isn't, but it's still leaving things in there. And we have these cards as well that once they've been played, they get reshuffled into the library as well. Those crop up quite a bit. Some slightly more broken than others. All right, moving on. Fountain of Youth we've not seen before. Ah, there we go, 10th edition. I like that artwork. Don't know if I did have a copy of that or not. Should maybe check through. I'm sure at some point we'll get through to 10th edition in terms of going back through cards I have in my binders and various other things. Cheerios. Cheerio. Oh, yeah, of course, 0 casting cost. Tangle Bloom. So 1 to cast, and then 1 and tap, and you gain 1 life. Also an artifact. I mean, yeah, there's going to be tons of life gain stuff. Even if I'm just curious about say artifact 181 artifact cards, and in terms of cards that are totally colourless. Oh yes. I have these, I think, in some guise. Probably 4th edition. Just because they were interesting cycle. And of course we've seen Zuran Orb. Sundroply, of course. Oh yeah. These ones. Yeah, those life gain when you get when you cast spells of a certain colour, and variations on that often crop up as reprints in core sets. But we've got some fun old school artwork, so that's always nice. Icy Manipulator, well, we did look at that last week. Quick look to see if there's anything I want to add. Mysterious Tome, Chilling Chronicle, Ring of Gix. Oh, it's vintage. Vintage Masters. Yep. So, on a complete tangent, what about Sceptres of Magic? What do you reckon? Look at that. 11 Sceptres of Magic there are. So this is part of what do they call it? I always get confused. It's one of those little sort of three card cycles, mini cycle, where there's a synergies between them. Scepter. Is there a scepter? Ivory Tower, another life gain card. For some reason I know it more through this artwork. I'm trying to think of what that might be, and my guess is I did play... Did I draft VMA? I think I did. What was that? That was the From the Vault Relics. I'm trying to think if I do actually have this or not. I don't know if I do. I mean, I might have the card, but I don't know if I have the full From the Vault. And you can see again it cropped up in this Pro Tour collector set. Was that the Mia Brothers? One. Hand size matters, life gain, mirror to black vise, where there your opponent is, or sorry, any player with number of cards in his or her hand -4. So the reverse, obviously. And there's several cards where they check the hand size, and then something triggers accordingly. Oh dear me, I forgot to copy his first printing back. Oh yeah, Ensnaring Bridge. Multani. And there were a number of cards in... What's this? This is... Kamigawa. Saviours. Where it was sort of checking the number of cards in hand. As you can see, it's quite, look at that, a lot. Wow. I don't know if I've seen that before when we've done this particular episode where we see like massive amount of cards here from one set when we're looking at similar cards. It's cool. This card. And yes, reprinted in 10th. That's when I first saw it. You can see pretty properly, pretty popular in core sets. And was that in Origin? Yeah, Origins. So yeah, it's interesting to see an artifact with card draw on it. And you can see, there's... Once you're sort of familiar with this, then you do start to look at it and go, that reminds me a lot of other cards that do, this thing of drawing stuff. So we got similar to a whole load of cards, Illuminated Folio, Oracle's Vault, the Mana Rig, Urza's Blueprint, Hermes's Tome, and of course they just play around with the conditions and or the cost. Now, is there anything here? So worse than Arcane Encyclopedia. So that's 3 to cast, that's 4 to cast, and that's 3 to draw a card. And surprise, surprise, was that actually in a Commander product? No, well, it's core set originally. Okay. Now, if I was to just go back here, hold on, gone wrong there. So go, okay, draw. There's tons of stuff, but how often do you see that on an artifact? Now, of course, yeah, these sort of things where often you get this additional ability on an artifact that does something else, where if you're prepared to pay a cost, sacrifice it, then you get to draw a card. So there's, yeah, that's why so many of these are coming up. You know, you've got it on the clue stones, you've got it on the lockets. It's an interesting way of doing it. So clue stones, lockets. I was on Carnage Altar. I'm trying to remember if I've seen that on other, like, sack outlets. Where you get to draw a card, I think that's... Is it? Yeah, yeah, that's it. Phyrexian Vault, that's what I'm probably thinking of. And culling dice. Okay, so again, you know, various ways where they can play around with the cost of drawing a card. Okay, yeah, land tax. Yeah, it's cropped up in a few special sets, but you can see like massive gap. There's certain cards which just they've never reprinted for obvious reasons. Yeah, even the 4th edition version is $35. I don't believe I have a copy of this. Oh, catch up. It's an interesting term. Players who have less get more. Okay. And not surprisingly, I imagine that's been a thing for quite a while. Yeah, and again in each colour, you know, you're seeing different twists on how that catch-up might be conditioned or paid for, or yeah, whatever. Oh, yeah, Night of the White Orchid, of course. Right, moving on. Millstone, right. Good old Millstone. Now, I can remember when this, yeah, I saw this in 10th edition. And you can see it's cropped up sporadically in core sets. And then we had this sort of, also here in the, you know, M14, M19, and then, was it the Brothers' War? So yeah, repeatable mill. Obviously, there's also sets where they may well, you know, push a mill strategy or make it achievable. It's one of those things which is often a hard thing to pull off in sets. I'm talking here about, within limited, in terms of if you have to draft a set and you want to try and draft a mill deck. There's certain sets, and unfortunately I can't think of them off the top of my mind, but you'll get this sort of interesting alignment of synergies which does make a mill strategy achievable. But a lot depends on often just happening to draft a particular higher rarity card, and then from that just really creates a nice synergy with some of the lower rarity stuff, where lower rarity cards that have it they don't mill in sufficient volumes or consistently enough to be able to pull that off. Now, of course, there are some sets, and you can see here again, the predominant set symbol as we're going through here. Certain areas you can see some sets there was a strategy where it was tied to maybe like a guild or a certain subset within the set, and that was like might have been one of the archetypes that was there, and putting in combination with other things, and obviously it's in this deck because we have two things in here, a slow mill and slow damage, and then just using the other cards to basically gum up the works while that actually manages to get pulled off. Mishra's Factory, there's quite a number of these creature lands, this sort of assembly worker type thing, and you've got cards like Mutavault, and this other category we've seen before, which is this virtual legendary, where you think, well, that card really should have been legendary. So this is always interesting for me, because I think if I get this sorted right, wasn't this around the time of, so I'm familiar with these retrospectively, but for me, it was more here. These ones are rare in World Wake. And I remember watching on YouTube, I think, tournaments at the time, and you'd see these sort of crop up in decks. Of course, great, because these ones, you've got dual lands and the ability to turn it into a creature as well. So, sort of fantastic utility, and that's been repeated a few times in certain sets. Obviously now, if you're going to do it, it's going to be a cycle, but here and there you find the odd colourless one. Stalking Stones is one, Mutavault, Blinkmoth Nexus, Dread Statuary. And I often see these crop up on EDH lists just as a neat way of having a card in. If there's been some sort of mass creature removal and you've got one of these in play, then you have a creature already. So that's where I've seen it. Recall. Didn't really get reprinted beyond 6th. So again, another regrowth effect here. Slightly different cost afforded it. Oh yeah, Ruins of Trokair. Let's look at the cycle go. The sack lands from this set, from Fallen Empires. I quite possibly have these, quite possibly. Now, the other thing I was interested in, he did mention this add multiple mana, which I imagine is quite a few cards, but I was curious if there were other cards here. I suppose it's best, yeah, I can sort of see already the sort of things that are coming up. But it's always handy if I do this because it makes the cycles pop out a bit more. What did I do wrong here? Oh, because I forgot to do that. Okay, yeah. Things like Soul Ring, the Urzatron stuff. And then you've got stuff like cropping up in the dark, and there's a cycle here. Interestingly, it crops up on creatures. We've got things like Lake of the Dead. So you seem to get the odd card here and there. Of course, Mana Crypt. And then we get this, there's a group of cards in, was it Mirage, but not a cycle. There's a cycle in Visions of the Crew lands, because once everything gets sorted out, because it comes into play, you have to return an untapped planes you control to your owner's hands, and it comes in tapped, then it starts generating mana and one colourless. Scorched Ruins, which will, when it eventually comes online, does 4 colourless mana. And things like Worn Power Stone as well. And these other ones, in these really interesting Urza period lands from the block, where they scale based on certain cards you have. And then this stuff, was it the depletion counters business? And then stuff here from Invasion, whereas the colour combinations. Again, a number of these you got a sack and a couple of coffers. Gilded Lotus. Yeah, the Ravnica block lands, of course. And then other cards like this that can just generate obscene amounts of mana suddenly. Oh, good old Jorga, yeah. Yeah, it's nice you get, like I said, some cycles, some of these are just dotted around in various sets, in various guises. You might get them in green or black scaling off of something else, so that makes it, more playable in a mono black deck, that sort of thing. Okay. Strip Mine, Banned in Legacy, Restricted in Vintage, Legal in Commander, and Oathbreaker. And usual things come up when you mention it: Ghost Quarter, Wasteland, Tectonic Edge, Encroaching Wastes. And I'm sure I've done this before, but doesn't hurt to do it again, which is lands that destroy other lands. And because we've covered land destruction in No Hand, No Land episode, where there's obviously quite a number of cards that do this in various ways, things like Stone Rain, but always interesting when you see it, stitched on, attached, stapled, however you want to think about it, to another land. And again, how they make it more or less fair, I suppose, for the opponent. Oh yeah, this another cycle. Oh no, probably no point covering this. Same thing, different colour. And then short swords to plowshares, life gain of your opponent, similar to lay down arms, and stuck onto solitude. But you've got instant speed removal that is exiling, but also might give the opponent something else. So with this one, giving your opponents life gain, lots of reasons why that might be the case, and what you benefit, how you benefit from that. Oh look, we have a steam beast. Oh, Wizard School. Well, got to take a look at this, haven't we? Even though it's probably just in there to meet the criteria. Yep, never been reprinted as far as I know. Yeah. But, I can't help it. You've got to love that artwork. I don't think I have these. But it's tempting. Oh yeah, Wrath of God. We've looked at numerous Wrath effects. Interesting when they did that, the colour shifted one. And then you've got things like Day of Judgment, which is so Day of Judgment, destroy all creatures, 2 and 2 white, versus bury all creatures. So what's the... And before I do that, oh yeah, I remember this, yeah. Look at that, reusable Wrath. For 3 and 2 white to cast, but 2 and 2 white as well. Symmetrical. Zuran Orb, another one we've looked at in a previous episode. I don't know if there's anything much I want to add to this. Probably not. This we haven't seen. 1 tap, sacrifice it to have it deal 2 damage to any target. So that makes me think, okay, so there was a... Oh yeah, I've forgotten about these. Yeah, this was the one where they had these cycle of artifacts where they staple like boon type effects onto them. If that's right. Let's have a look. 2 damage, gain 2 life and prevent damage, draw 2 cards, +2/+2, and then 2 mana. Okay. Interesting. But the bit I was more curious. So that's 2 damage to any target. It's got calling it Bombard Self. Oh yeah, it's the Explosive Apparatus and yeah, Moonglove Extract. But wasn't there the... Let me just look. Yeah, the Firelight Spellbomb, that's what I was trying to think of. And that was part of a cycle, wasn't it? I think. Yeah, the Spellbomb stuff. So this we get what? Bounce in blue. Yeah, these were all activated by the certain colours, or had an ability. Sorry, they had an ability on them that was activated by the colour, and then they had another ability where you could sack it and draw a card. Yeah, now it's coming back. This is also the card I was thinking of earlier, where you sacrifice it and then you get to draw a card. But with these, so the blue one did bounce, the black one did. No, sorry, the green one did. Made a land, a creature. The black one discard, the red one damage. Yeah, the white one life. Okay. Oh yeah, good old circle of protections. Yeah. Do exactly what they say. So they're always in white. I think there's even, isn't there like circle of protections that actually protect other things as well. Just circles generally, and then if we just do white and make it ID of 1. All shall be revealed. Yeah, so shadow. What I'm looking for, maybe there wasn't. I thought there was a circle of protection artifacts, but maybe. Yeah, no, I'm thinking of something else, obviously. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's there. Circle of protection artifacts. Okay, good. Good. Hydroblast. Yeah, we've had a look at this before. We've got blue counterspell. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because modal, of course, yeah. But not quite worded in the same way at the time. Although when you look at this later, I think more up-to-date printings do have it like a modal spell. Jester Scout we looked at, last week actually. So extracting stuff from various places. For some reason I'd got it in my head that there was a similar an artifact that did a slightly watered down thing, but I just can't remember, and I haven't seen it come up. Sea Sprite. So this was in the sideboard from Homelands, reprinted in 5th edition. 1/1 with flying for 2, protection from red. French vanilla. Alliteration, hate red. Sea Eagle, better than Sea Eagle, which is a 1 and a blue for a 1/1 with flying. Doesn't have the pro red on it. Serrated Arrows. Now this is from Homelands. And where do we see it reprinted? Oh, that was one of the dual decks, wasn't it? And this was another dual deck. Okay. So in the dual decks also crops up and Time Spiral. Okay. What category do they put this in? Unique counter, of course. Gives MM counters. minus counters. Yeah. So I suspect, yeah, infect, which is interesting. Yeah. So do we see like a wax and wane in Magic of that particular strategy or mechanic, however you want to think about it? Oh yeah, unstable mutation, of course, and skeleton ship. Yeah, I was aware of that. And so beyond that, what you're going to start to see is, you know, cropping up within Wither for this particular sort of 2 mini blocks that were Shadowmoor, Lorwyn period, of which there are many. And then, yeah, you can see across both, across several sets actually, and yeah, no surprise, Scars of Mirrodin, where infect was the thing. And then didn't we see it again? So a lot of infect across that block, and then you've got it cropping up in, what was this, Amonkhet? Comes back again, but just as -1/-1 counters. So, you know, old school, I suppose, not tied to Wither or poison, so real old school. And then, what was that one recently? Oh, maybe they did it differently then. Yeah. Okay. Here we go, what's this? Yeah, Arrow Devastation. Okay. And then finally, Steel Artifact. Okay. So, theft of artifacts. How much do we see? And where do we see it? So, yep. Red. Okay, so old here. Oh, yeah, 8th edition. What's this? That? Oh, 5th. These chaps say, I remember those. Yeah, Memnock. Beacons. Oh, Hellkite Tyrant, yeah. Oh, this is interesting. So yeah, this one. When it does combat damage, you sort of grab artifacts, and at the beginning of upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. Didn't we do a build around of this? I'm sure this cropped up in maybe a Commander Durdle or Commander Fodder episode, I think. Also, yeah, not surprisingly, to see it turn up in sets where, you know, artifacts were a big thing, so you can, you know, steal other people's artifacts. Maybe it's there as artifact hate, or maybe it's there just to give yourself even more artifacts. But trying to think, what was it doing in World Wake? Can anybody remember? Was this a So I know, obviously, you know, blue artifact decks are a thing. 2 and 2 blue. Whenever Inquisitor deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an art to card and shuffle. Exile it. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. So it's, yeah, interesting way of stealing stuff you see in Magic sometimes. But I'm curious, was there an artifact deck lurking in that block? Because what else was there in... So Zendikar was a pretty fast... The Zendikar block as a whole was a pretty fast format. Zendikar particularly. So I'm just thinking what else was in there as a sort of antithesis to that. Did we have walls in there? I think. Yeah, comment. I'd be curious to know, because I'm getting it now. I get real nostalgic vibes about Zendikar, Worldwake and Rise of the Eldrazi, even though Rise of the Eldrazi was, I suppose, that thing where they would reboot the theme for the last set that you see occasionally. But, and I think you've seen my really well-worn, is it Beckett's? I can never remember the name of the magazine series that looked like was going to happen, and they just disappeared off the face of the earth. So that company that, you know, would always print lots of card prices had done, I think, Magic ones back, and then they tried to reboot, do a similar thing around the time of Zendikar block. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent. But I did an episode about well-loved magazines, and that was one of them. And it came out around the time of Worldwake, and I used to just pour through that to the point as, okay, here's a good question. Has anybody, this is pre-owning a tablet, so now you own a tablet, it's easy to do. Has anybody loved the magazine so much that they pretty much take it with them when they had it all the time? That's why that got so dog-eared, that magazine that I featured on Well-Loved Magazines, was that I literally, every time we went anywhere, particularly like if we were going out in the car, I'd have like a little sort of bag I'd take with me, not a backpack but sort of a satchel thing, and that would have my coffee that in it. So if I ever got an opportunity to read it, but that was before iPad, and now, as we've seen in my an episode I did at the weekend, it's interesting to acquire. I should see. Yeah, actually, I haven't tried yet. I've not seen it come up when I did that. I wonder if that's available on Internet Archive. That'd be cool. But yeah, that's one of the reasons that magazine's so well worn, is just because I was actually, sad as it is, I was carrying that around with me quite often. And if we were in the car and my wife happened to be driving, I'd be sitting there in the car, particularly on like a road trip, like any excuse on a road trip where I wasn't driving, like it's like, oh yeah, I'll take that magazine and flip through it. Yeah. And I have a big smile at the moment, but I always have a big smile with these episodes anyway. Did we ever do I don't think we ever did a Thada build, did we? If it ever came up, the opportunity. Oh, let's go for the complete tangent. What do we got here? Theft. 37 theft decks. With Thada. Oh yeah, bribery. Control magic. Vidalcan shackles. Okay, so one day Oh yeah, that's one of my favourites. All I need now is a nice warm beverage and a fluffy banky, and I'll be sorted for the rest of the day. And maybe a nice hot water bottle. It's actually a bit cold here in Nova Scotia today. A little bit overcast. Okay, on that note, thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.